ready to go, and everybody's waking up. So you miss a day and you walk around.
You get it back when.
Nope.
No?
You do, but you're traveling, so you'll leave in the morning and you'll get there in the morning, but you'll be tired again. So it's usually if you can have a week or two to get adjusted, and then, but I don't know people. I don't know a lot of people who have the time to do that. So.
Okay. Ich hätte mir das Recht nicht zu unterschreiben, weil wir sind nicht unter den Voraussetzungen stark. Wir haben uns nicht Ja, ich werde auch
Ти от ангажиментите ли се определяш или ти си определяш ангажиментите?
Активизирам.
Кое?
Първата част.
Добре. Аз съм. Ако ти не си добре, ти можеш да си изчисляваш.
Wenn du das ernst nimmst, stehst du unter das. Ich glaube, der Einzige, der relativ entspannt ist, ist Nils. Der scheint sehr gut strukturiert zu sein. Sehr gut.
Вече го гледам много.
Добре.
Хора, които ме провокират.
С кое? С кое това? Кое е това? Краси.
It's broken.
Yeah, okay.
Where you're from? Bulgaria.
I think the classes that sounded
That was a
prestigious.
commitment.
And yes, that is somewhat helping.
Yeah, thank you for that sacrifice. Yeah, just go. You guys together?
Приятна работа.
Yeah, we are from church, one church. He's from another church.
Okay.
From Bulgaria.
Just young people in the church. You're not the bishop, the pope,
No, I'm not.
the pastor. Good. Good. That's what we need. Excellent. Well, good. I'm glad you're here. I heard about this, what, you have about 40? How many people from
Bulgaria, around
42.
42.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's very nice. The first meeting.
Just made some tiny adjustment, but I just left it.
What time are we supposed to start?
50 to 11.
What time?
50 to 11. 10 o'clock, 10, 45 minutes.
11:45? I mean, 10:45?
10, 45 minutes. Свободно, свободно. Добре.
Just don't want to start.
Да. Може аз си нося флешка.
Ще го наградим.
I'm just excited and ready, but I have to wait one more minute, don't I? or two.
Yes. 50 more seconds.
Wow. Well, that's. Well. Do you want me to? Is it automatic? We are here. Are you? Well, are you guys? You feel well right now?
Yeah.
You're happy, whole.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. Oh, I'm excited to get started. I just got off the plane yesterday, and I've been spending some time in travel, so just to get here. So I don't know if I can get my days right or moments right, but I hope I don't fall asleep on you guys. If not, we all need a nap, don't we? But I don't know. I thought maybe we'd start with prayer and a little introduction and ask some questions for you. See, there's a test, quiz, exam. No exam. Lord, thank you for the grace that calls all of us to a place. We put our hands and our hearts and our feet in front of the lives of other people. I pray that you would cultivate in our hearts and our minds the awareness and the need to connect with people in such a way that will bring eternity close to this world, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Just a couple, I have to do the plenary session tonight, so I'll do an introduction a little bit there, so it'll be a little bit of to review a little bit, but I'm Troy Fitzgerald. I'm a pastor at one of our university churches in the United States, in Walla Walla, Northwest. So I've been there for one church for 21 years. So something really wrong with me, or them, or it's a good thing. So I have, I've seen a lot of young people as they come through. Now I see their children have children, and they're just like their parents. So I've been there for a while. I had a luxury or a blessing to have the history of doing something over time. So if I'm a very patient person, it's because I don't want to give up on any of our young people or our causes that we start and they get stopped sometimes, or ideas that doesn't come to a place where it can bloom at the right time, so there's another time. In other words, I have a confidence that God is going to do this work with me or in spite of me, because He loves people more than I do, and He knows. And so my wife tells me I need to remind myself that I'm not as smart as I think I am sometimes. usually when she asks me several tasks around the house that I need to do. Anyway, but I have been, wow, yeah, it's not that important for the things that I've done or where I came from. I grew up kind of in a very secular setting, so I'll talk about that a little bit. When I start talking, though, I want you to know that I take a little extra time for my words now, because 2 years ago I had a massive stroke. That massive stroke almost killed me, so I didn't lose any of my memory or my processes or identity or anything like that, but I was in good shape. It was a fluke, the nature of my heart. My heart, and actually 20% of the people in this room have what they call an open heart. That means when you're born and you start breathing, the doctor slaps you and you breathe, that means a little flap in your heart to your lung closes. And it seals, right? Well, about 25% of us in this room, it doesn't. And you'll never know. But unless you want to push a clot through an injury from your leg or something like that, it'll go to your brain. That's what happened to me. I was speaking to some students. But anyway, I had to learn to walk and talk 2 years ago again. So, from beginning, everything. It was a long, long journey. So now, it was all, it hit my motor skills. So most of the time, I know what I'm supposed to say, but I have to take my time to say the words. Wife likes it because I'm a better listener now. So I don't have all the words all the time. I listen, and she really likes that. She just forgets the fact that I like to say a few words, but she's faster now. So anyway, actually, just with the patience, especially when I get nervous or I get cold or whatever, I have to take my time. So if you're patient with me, I'll have the right words. But I don't know if you've ever had anything like that in your life, but I decided I'm not going to hide. I'm going to keep writing. I write, preach. I'm just going to do it as broken and weak and not perfect. And I'm just going to do that because I think God will He'll do great things in our lives, in our weakness, more than He'll do in our skills, in our abilities. You see people who will fall over a cliff, it's because of their greatness, right? So, anyway, okay. Well, that little introduction, and then I want to ask some questions for you, okay, at the very beginning. Let's just do it right now. In the last 30 years, almost, I have launched and had like I said, that luxury and that blessing of being able to connect with young people in such a way that those relationships were just more than friendships. They were more than. It wasn't just a professional coach or things like that. We entered into relationships in such a way that those relationships now we have a bond and the ability to challenge each other to do great things in their lives. Hard things sometimes. Mostly it's at the church level, our world changed in the last 100 years. Mostly in the last 20 years, the world changed. And we haven't seen the results of the families and what we're going to see around the world. And it's not just America that's all screwed up with that. It's everywhere. In the Western side, Western life. I've been to Africa, Australia, Asia, and so we see the world is changing a little bit significantly, and we're going to see some of the ramifications of it coming. We need to go back to look, and we need to start looking about our relationships with people. We have strategies, we have events, we have skills. Our technology is great. We can refine all these things that we can control. But there are things that what we're going to see is, I'll say it like this, like the Red Sea. When that happened, there was no other options other than going through there. So God had to do that. We're going to have to see that in our future. Probably, I don't know, I'm not a prophet, so I'm not going to say when, but at some point, our abilities and our resources are not going to do this work. We're going to have to look to see, to teach us what's the next step. And walking on, the sand, the walls are the Red Sea. That's a very uncomfortable place, I'm pretty sure. For me, I don't like the water, I like the ground, But we're looking at that. So. Okay. Let me ask you a question. When I start putting that word up there, mentoring, I want to know at the beginning, because usually at the end of this you have 5 minutes for questions or comments or things like that. And that's backwards for me. I would rather stop and shift and think about that, but at least adjust and start thinking about that more. And if I know ahead of time, what are the things that you need? What are the things that you face? What are the things that you want out of the next 90 minutes? 80 minutes. So when you're coming into this place, what were you looking for? And what is your situation in such a way that you hope to see in your heart and your mind, and maybe in this next hour and a half, some things that you want to have and walk from this place from. So do you have some ideas, or do you want to talk to each other about it? Yeah, what are some of the things that you really face and things that you want to see when this concept of mentorship? Please, don't be shy. I am shy. I'm forcing myself to be here. So
One of my things when I saw this course was mentoring. To me, that means walking alongside. And the seismic shift for me is going from event-based to mentoring.
Has to.
Because the personal and ministering through who you are by mentoring. And that's a challenge for a lot of us. But I think that to do that demands courage. Because it means to live in your own weakness or strength or whatever else and meet that person where that person is and mentor through that. And so that's what I would like to hear more about.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
I'd like to hear some principles about how to mentor, to practice this in my church, in my job, in my life.
Okay. Excellent.
For me, the challenge would be like as a pastor, as a youth leader, I have like several people like hundreds or like 200 created, and I can't mentor all of them. So how do I do it? Do I do like quality over quantity? How do I choose? Of course, I ask God to help me choose the persons that I'm going to mentor with. But how do you decide which persons you want to like come into mentorship and be a mentor to them?
Yeah.
And why not this person but this person? And how do you know?
That's a difficult one. You already answered it in one way, but we'll talk about it, I think, a little bit. I hope, hopefully. At the end of this, there's no PhD with this. There's no expert. In fact, I would encourage us to have this conversation and connect some of these relationships here, and let's add to this conversation more and more. Honestly, that question, knowing what to start, because my church is 2,400 members. I have 2,000 university students. I'm not the only one, we've got 5 of them, but if we're thinking about that answer, my youth group has 100 high school, 200, I have young adults, what we call 18 to 30, I have 400 of them in my folder right there. They're all over the world. And then I have a community. So how do we, it's going to be surprising a little bit, but at some point it'll be, it's going to be important to be able to say, this whole work, it's going to be about one person at a time. One at a time. That's how Jesus did the same thing. He didn't do it by wholesale or try to maximize your resources. It's always going to be that. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
Connected to that question, one path for me is multiplication. So making others, people mentors as well. People that I mentor become mentors, which produce mentors, and involving the church to mentor other young people. So my question, or my interest here is the kind of way, how can I become a mentor? What skills help me to be a better mentor?
Exactly.
And how to identify other people being able to be mentors themselves, to make them trainers of trainers.
That's what so we'll look at that passage too. I think that's a key one. Okay. Others who's in the wrong room, but you're excited about this anyway. You're going to do sandwiches, but no. All right. Is that a good start, or is there more? Yes.
Maybe the relationship between mentoring in church context, general young people, even potential for leaders or normal young people, but also a relationship how to mentor young people in special needs. Do we need expertise and professional help in order to be mentors?
Yeah.
What pastors and young leaders, how far they can be mentors?
Yeah.
In difficult situations of self-harm, depression, suicide.
Yeah. You used a word though, young people who have different needs, special needs. What does that mean here?
There are organizations, youth work organizations, who are partnering with schools, with doctors, with medical to help people with young people with special needs.
Yeah, people
And
have
they
development
come for
challenges and things like that. Yeah.
And they come for mentoring
Gotcha.
sessions. Is it realistic that we, in our youth ministry, can have something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. I have a son, who was told that he's retarded and he'll never leave my house. He might never leave my house. I have one who's plays everything, sings, dances, plays soccer, kicks the ball, dunks the ball since he was 13 years old. And I have the other one, and both of them have people in your life. Now, I'm their father, but I need more. I'm counting on more. So yeah, how do you do that? That's, yeah. All right. Anything else? As we start, yeah,
I
question.
just wondered if, what is the difference between mentoring and discipleship?
Semantics.
Amen.
That's another word.
No, there's more. Maybe it'll be, yeah. We started using words in our church. When we find a word that is, I'll say it, is sexy, or it's cool, or it's something that works, and you can market this thing well. It's a new thing. We're always looking for a new thing, aren't we? Because the old thing didn't work, or the old thing I failed, or it failed me, or whatever it is. So you can find that other word, and you can capture that. We don't say the word evangelism a lot, because we don't want to say that word in some sectors, because it has a different experience that's connected to that. So we'll do that. We did that with like mentoring. So if I teach you how to make a sandwich or a burrito, I'm your mentor. That's actually just training a person how to do food. But so there's some definitions of it. As you go, you'll see it'll refine the definition more, I think, a little bit. The distinctions are, it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, when we're called to make disciples, how we're going to do that, it really doesn't matter how we do that. We just have to do that. And that process, we have stories, we have examples, we can use that. So we start using words, and like when we're going from one language to another, our words have different meanings and experiences. Got to be careful with that. So yeah, I like that, because we've had a little conversation about the nature of our words and stuff like that. When we start talking with stories, we'll understand what we're talking about better. We'll actually know what to do, because we'll think in stories, not in just words and semantics and things like that. So I'll get started with that. All right, but that's important for us to do that. All right, any other questions as we get started? Because I just kind of want to make sure if I was on the wrong or the right track. Okay. So if you were to think about mentoring, I always go back, and like I said, my background is I was a very secular child growing up. I became a believer when I was about 12, 13 years old. I lived in the Silicon Valley. That's where all the computers kind of, Facebook, all of that was in my backyard. Actually, at that time, it was a cherry, groves of cherries. It was like, I didn't have any of those buildings. And I watched IBM in my front yard. Across the street, there's about 4 kilometers of buildings. It's just IBM. It was across the street. Totally ruined my life, because now I couldn't play outside. So I'm so against IBM. My parents were just they were just normal party animal, people. We were drinking and crazy things at my house when I was growing up, but then I saw my father change like that. Well, I don't know if I'm not going to take the time of the story, maybe another time, but changed my life to see another person be transformed like that. Got my attention as a young person. I started to follow God, but I got to a place in my life where I was lost. I didn't know what to do. When I got to be 18 or 19, I had no idea what I should do. I know I was an athlete, and that's all I can do. And even when I was at university, that's all I had confidence with. And then I got to a place where I had to make a decision. I went back home, and a pastor, a young pastor, he got me back into Pathfinders as a counselor. I got a job into a summer camp. Some of those things I had to do anyway, but he started to do something different than the rest of the whole youth group. It was different. I was different than everyone else. And I don't know why he chose me. See, that was a hard question for me. His name is Jerry Nelson. But we started doing, and I've already been baptized, so there's no reason to have any Bible studies, right? He walked me through the spiritual life. We practiced it together. Every time I said something that I said about the scriptures or prayers or things like that, he would always say, "What you just said made sense to me." We were almost like peers when it came to those spiritual life. But I didn't even know what he was doing, and I'm not even sure he knew what he was doing at that time. But I was a part of his life. I was working with him. 6 months after memorizing passages of scripture, doing service projects, I was the right hand of this young pastor, and he left the seminary. He gave me the keys. And I was ready. I didn't feel like that, but I was terrified. But the next 6 months, I continued to grow. I've never stopped looking up to that person, not because he's a legend. He just made that decision to say, "You have a part of my life now. You have my attention, and let's go." And so, in every place, he watched me doing things that he never did. He never went to do a PhD. He never published books. He's never been to other places to speak, and yet he celebrates all of those things in me. One time we went to speak together in Australia, and we had a totally different approach and everything, but they knew that they were connected together, that we were like we were either brothers or, he was young enough that he couldn't be my father, but they knew we were marked. I was marked by this person. Marked. We want to do the multiplication because we're ambitious and we want to do the right thing. It's the thing that God is, like from Genesis, what do you say? 6 days, what do? We produce. That's why in our nature we want to do it. All right? But this is one of the things that I think it's important for me to say, is that at some point we have to choose, even if it's to learn how to connect with another person, to train them, to walk with them, to do life with them in such a way that it's mutual, but I have more experience. And I've missed something that I will learn from that person. That it has to have that. We'll look at some of that, but when I did that, that whole story, I was reflecting that, and I wanted to text him this morning and say, you still are the one name that I'll always call. And when I share his story, that you did that for me. And right now, I have people around the world that I mirrored that same experience. There might be 100 people like that now who are around the world that I just had a couple conversations. I walked them through a process too. And I'll show that little model of that process, and maybe it'll be helpful. But in order to do that, I need to look at a couple things. Somebody wants to read for, because I can do it all day, but who wants to read? Who's ready? Go.
In the future, when your son asks you, what is the meaning of the stipulations, decrees, and laws the Lord our God has commanded you? Tell him.
Wait, the great answer is coming, right? But that great answer, you got to go back in your mind. Remember the story at the beginning. It says, love the Lord with all your and all your. And then take your kids and teach them as you go. Put them on their hands, the foreheads, the t-shirts, everything. You do all of that. But then there's going to be a moment in life. When they get older, they're going to stop and they're going to do this. They're going to stop and say all the things that they memorized, all the things they showed up to, all the sash, all the badges, all the things that you did that was very concrete. Now the world is totally different. Now they moved from a different stage of development. And now they're thinking a little bit more theoretically or conceptually now. And now people are not always fair or consistent and decent. And even the people who used to be your heroes are now a little bit weak and problematic. Right? Do you know what I'm talking about? You get to this place in life and everything changes. I think this is that stage that they're talking about here. And so they're saying, well, they're going to ask, what does this stuff mean? It's pretty clear. I don't know why you can't understand that question. They're asking a different question, isn't it? Why is it so relevant? What should this mean for me? Now, continue. Here's the answer.
We were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with mighty hand. Before our eyes, the Lord sent signs and wonders, great and terrible, on Egypt and Pharaoh and his whole household.
Was that true?
That's for the first generation.
It was only the first generation. The book of Deuteronomy, though, it's written for the people who were born in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with this picture?
They were slaves.
They weren't. They don't even know what Egypt looked like. They never saw Pharaoh. They never saw those things, but they're taught to think and share and tell this story, because this is not just an event. This is actually a moment of salvation, the experience. It's the same thing when we look at the cross. Have you been to the cross recently? No, I can't go back 2,000 years. But yeah, I can, because I know what it's like to be lost and now found, or dead, but now by the grace of God I can be alive. And now I can talk that way because I walk the same thing. Any of you have been slaves?
Yes.
Some. You can talk about that in a very experiential way. But not in the same way as a Hebrew. Or not, in Africa. Or in America. In the first, the beginning of their history over there. But we understand, if you take people around the world who responds to the word slaves, right, and you tell their stories, you're going to start hearing the same type of experience, aren't you? They're similar. We get it. The same thing we're asking them to do. So they're saying, young people, you have to tell the story again. So we're not talking about handing over a religion to people at this time. They've already had it, but they got to a point where they had a question. You need to arrest that question and understand, how do we respond? We don't give them 28 fundamental beliefs. I write about those things. I love them. I believe them. I preach that, but I don't define everything as an answer to their situation. There's more. Okay? All right. So, that's that one passage that I go back to, and I think, when I think about mentoring, we need to start to build or develop or cultivate young people, not just who are ready to go right now, but we need to start doing that with the 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kids, as they're going, as a process, not an event or a moment at an altar call. But you've seen this passage before, right? When you start thinking about that, you see Jesus looking at his disciples, and when you read this, what part of this is hard to believe?
The great things.
It's hard enough for me to think that I'll do those things. Anyone, save people from leprosy today? No, before breakfast. You have time, don't you? Somebody help people with, the whole idea of death. Just call them up. Go to the cemetery when they're doing a funeral, right? And say something. Stop the funeral. Stop the car. Pull the hearse. Open it up. Say something, right? Do you guys do that?
No.
The hospital? Just go in there and start shouting in the name of Jesus, right? Why not? There's some good reasons why we don't do that. Number one, for me, is the solution for death and cancer and AIDS and slavery and all of those things. The solution happened at the cross. He fixed it. And he's going to return to bring this world again. So it's not like we don't have to do things, but even Jesus didn't heal everyone, right? But he said, things that I do, you're going to do. Do you see that relationship? And it might be, you might do more. Well, what's different about us and them? Think about the multiplication of that. Jesus was there in, the town of Nain. When he's at Nain, that city or that town, he can't be at Jerusalem, can he? But now after Pentecost and the Holy Spirit can come into every believer, guess what? He can be everywhere. Do you see? Greater things. He's not lying. He can do greater things now in us because he can be in all of us. That multiplication is that possibility is there. It's not hard to understand that. And then this is the other one. All right. Think about somebody in your life that has been your teacher, leader, mentor, or whatever. What's the person in your life that you just want to be like them? Not everything about that person, you know? That person that you look up to and said, I'd like to be like that. Do you see the teaching, the training part? Everyone who is underneath someone, they want to be like that person when they're trained. You'll see those attributes and their characteristics. Okay, when you do that, you start seeing that this is, like I said, when we go back, you watch the master teacher. He did it one person at a time. Some of the best things that Jesus did. Think about the times that did Jesus ever said publicly who he was? He did privately, though. Can you tell the stories and find those stories? The Samaritan woman. You're talking about the Messiah? Guess what? That's me. John, the blind boy, right? It was only after that he says, do you believe in the Son of God? I don't know. I just got my eyes back. I don't know. Show me. I can see stuff now. Tell me, right? And he says, it's me. Surprise! Right? He does that. He does it privately. There are things that he's going to do one-to-one. I mean, all the conversations that he had with people that was personally. It's in this principle. So when I start thinking about that, I start thinking about this whole experience. And I had to go through about finding a process for me because I need to be very structured about mentoring. I want to, if I want to do this, I want to think about that thoughtfully. So when I started with my church, I did something. I put all of the young people in my church on the board, on the table, all of them. I started thinking about where these young people are at. Where are they in life? Where are they? Some of them are very young, and some were older. Some people didn't even go to church. So I had to understand where the people are. But then I also knew that we had young people who are ready to go. And so I developed a model for me. Now, the model is, I don't know, sometimes I'd like to change it or whatever, but I want you to look at this process. Where do I get this concept of the shipyard thing? The shipyard, the word lead out is the definition of the word education. It's Latin. Long ago, it was a concept of a boat that pulls or tows a small boat over the breaking waters area, the rough waters, and then sends them out to sea. That's the image of that concept. That's we got the word from education. It means to lead out, to lead them out, to raise them up in such a way that they can stand and go, right? So that is the definition, and I said I just got the nautical idea, and I went through some of the words, but I put them together. Does it look like what we do in church or in our relationships? Now, the first three ones, like the relationships, I have a relationship with everyone in this room. I don't know any of you, but we are believers. We are in this place. We're human. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we can describe our relationship, and that's also true. We start thinking about all of the relationships, but that's why you have to start thinking, all of the young people in your church, you can actually, on a piece of paper right now, you can put all of your young people around you and describe your relationship with them one way or another. I'm going to come back to this, but I want to show you this. There is a. I want you to think about this. These are my young people, right? Some of them I have. I don't even know anything about them. I mean, I don't have a lot of information. Like I said, we've got a lot of young people, but I looked around and I said, I don't know what all of the people in this room, but I know I had some of them. I know I had some young people, I had no information. I put a dot line to that person. And then I started looking at some of the ones that I know who they are. And then I had a young person who's been to my house. The family was there. We've gone out on the boat. We've done things together. We did a service project. I took them to Zambia or whatever. Now that line is pretty deep. I can pretty much say anything. I can ask them to do things, and they will show up. I have a very thick, deep relationship. I can't do that with everyone, can I? Can you?
No.
Do you want to?
No.
Do you want to have that kind of emotional drain on you? It's like so overwhelming for me to think about that many people, but you can do this still. But you have to prioritize the things that you do. And these relationships that you have power and influence, to actually do that, that's a priority. You have to do things to deepen these relationships here. I need to know more about this, but that's pretty easy. I can just go on Facebook and find out what their hobbies are, right? So I know a little bit more. Now I send a card. I send a card with the guitar, because he likes guitars or something like that, right? So I can deepen that. You know, I play guitar. Yeah, I know. I heard about your guitar playing. You know that about me? I said, exactly. He says, that's weird, because I don't know anything about you. Well, it's a good time to start, right? So we start seeing that. You can start developing that. Well, he says, I want to learn how to play guitar more. You start thinking that. And that gets thicker and thicker with those endeavors that we do. Right? Now, take that picture and we go back to this. We start with those relationships. Understand, we are in fellowship is really what the Bible calls spiritual partnership. Everything that you do, whether it's a small group or a service project that you do, a gathering, whether it's food or not, it doesn't have to be a dinner or things like that, but it's these activities where we do life together, like he was talking about in the book of Acts, where they were there all the time. When we start doing life like that, you'll have more opportunity for this. Sometimes when I have high school students or secondary students, I do Sabbath school, they're so tired, they don't want to do anything. That opportunity, I try to teach, but that's not, I need to be there. So what's going to happen after that? It's just as important the things we said in the Bible study, because we were there, right? So, and there are these moments where we get where you can say, hey, you know, I was thinking about you the other day, and I was praying for you because, you know, I know you had a hard year. And the person can have a conversation at that point. But our conversation from talking about guitars or cars or music, and I said, guess what? I was just praying for you. What happened? This relationship just went vertical because we connected another person into this thing. Can people in IBM there, let's say if they're secular people, and that's, I don't know them, so, but let's say in our businesses and things like that out there, they can have relationships, right? Of course. They can have fellowship, can't they? Of course. But this is different now. Now you increase the conversation with another person in the room. So that has to be important for this process. But at some point, discipleship is a pivotal thing for me. When a young person has made a decision, and it doesn't have to be a decision for baptism or anything like that, it's just a decision when they're serious about something, or they care about something, or if they want this. I arrest those moments. When I hear them, they say it. Or I look at in the church and I can tell the conviction is on there. I says, you know what, I was just looking at you and I'm saying, did you like what you heard? Or what's going on? Are you struggling with this? He says, yeah. Those are moments where they have to make a decision about that conviction that they have. That is a perfect moment to say, it's time. Make a decision. Make a choice about what you want to do, whether it's Christ or whatever. When our young people make decisions one way or another, and they say yes, that's a prime opportunity to start doing this now. It's to start thinking, all right, we're not going to ask you to just say yes to Jesus because we did that. It didn't work. In other words, the whole idea of youth ministry, okay? Youth ministry, historically, started about 1900s. We started to, when the world changed significantly, we had to actually convert our kids to Jesus early. All of the resources, all the education, all the efforts. And then we're talking about Adventists, everyone. Even the Catholics were doing this. They were trying to find how we can get our young people to say yes to Jesus. What happens when we develop that muscle? That's the one thing that you do, and you don't do anything after that. So we had converts, but we didn't have people who are going to mature into believers over time. That's what we had. And over time, you know, you can see that. But what happens now? When they make a decision, I make a covenant with them and say, if you're asking me to be there with you in this, what are you doing? What do you want to do? So if a young person, let's say at the Pathfinder thing, and says they say, I want to be baptized now, I'm ready. There's studies, there's all these things, but there's more. I want more than that. I said, what? I can ask him to be a deacon, right? Or do a prayer. Maybe even preach a sermon, right? But somebody's going to do that, and if they're not going to do that, somebody else is, right? I want to ask young people now, in this model, in this approach, I want to ask them to think about something that we're not doing already. What's the one thing that we're not doing now? Well, we're not doing anything with the homeless, or or whatever it is, whatever the situation might be, these opportunities to start cultivating an activity for them. That whole process of growing them and giving them the abilities and skills and experiences. And you might not even have the skill to do it yourself, but you'll do it with them. This is a lot of work, isn't it? For one person, is that worth it? Is it a good business model?
It's a
Where did we get this idea that because business models were appropriate for something that transcends all of that? I just don't understand that. I do it. I want to do things well, but the problem is the business models can't answer the soul. It doesn't do it. If they did, they'd be selling it. Right? So something else has to happen. It's the process of the things that they'll have to sacrifice for, wrestle, they'll do. And I have story after story after story. I had 4 girls. They didn't like me. I am the opposite of them, you know. But I took them to lunch. I brought a pizza. And I sat down with them at lunch and I said, I see you. I said, what do you guys do? What do you talk about? And you know, I wanted to understand them. They do a lot of writing and stuff like that. They do art. Over time, the short story is I said, I cultivate this idea of, you know, why don't you start writing letters to people? The affirmation, the encouragement, things like that. They actually came up with this plan to find who didn't go to church on Sabbath. It's like attendance. And they would actually send notes in cards about it. It was about 15 years ago, so before you can text people. But these 4 people in church, they were writing letters of encouragement in people, and they just used their quiet little world that I didn't understand, and then I had to put a whole sermon around this 4 girls of this kindness that they did. They would bring these letters to the church, and we had to pay the postage and everything. It was starting to get pretty expensive because they were doing it, but we had people who should. One woman came up and says, "Somebody's sending me letters." I'm so sorry. What's the matter? Well, I've got 5 letters, cards, and she was angry. It seemed like I think her face is just formed into this place, and they can't smile. But she might have been smiling, but you couldn't tell. But she says, she just said 4 or 5 cards. He says, "I want to know who's spying on me." I said, "No." I said, "I think I know what's going on." She says, this woman, you know, these girls actually were sending these cards to this woman, and she might have been their Sabbath school teacher when they were really young. And I said, "These 4 girls," and I said, "I don't know if you know them, but I didn't know what to do with them. I need to give them a job." And I found out that they really like to write and like do the art. Did they do a little art? Yes, it's so beautiful. Well, yeah. Well, I didn't know what to say, but I said they're just trying to flesh out their love for God. And I don't know why they picked You. She said, well, nobody's spoken to me in 6 years in this church. And this is the only time. Even a pastor. Do you know any pastors? No, I don't know. I don't know. I just work here. Right? She didn't even know I was a pastor. I said, yeah. They found a place. That was an ownership. She did that all the way through high school. They did it into college. And their job was to continue that. But it's a different ministry now, because now it's on Instagram. But it's the same approach. You allowed another person to take this gift that God has given, and you put all of your might around that one person to find that experience. If you make a decision, you start doing things that have not done before, you have this thing. It's called ownership. I've paid for this, right? Now, you can help somebody else. I started doing with my Bible studies, and I stopped giving Bible studies, and I took a whole weekend with 10 young people who are about 14, 15, 16, and somebody who was 19, 20, 22. They were going to do the same thing, and I taught them how to give a Bible study. And I said, at some point, young people they're going to ask. It doesn't need to be a pastor that does this. In fact, what is the best way to learn? Yeah, teach it. Mathematics, you want to learn it? Try to teach it for someone. You'll learn it, right? There's something beautiful through that process. So, start looking at that, and I did. I even wrote. I don't know if you. In that process, I wrote the Christwise resources now, and what's interesting for me is I wrote the whole thing so that young people could teach younger people about to prepare for the baptism. And they mark their Bibles and stuff like that. You know, if I have to do a Bible study, I don't prepare. I do. But I already know it, right? They pray, sweat, struggle, find the best stories, make cookies. They do everything to do that because they don't want to fail that. They're in better hands with those young people than they'll be in my, right? Do you understand that? So it might be that we got to start trusting young people to do great things earlier, is what I'm saying. And one of the things that you have to do is you don't have to do this, but it'll work better. Find one. If you're going to look for somebody that way who's younger, then you have to do the other direction too. Find someone that you trust, you look up to, and do the same thing, but you ask them to hold you accountable and to be that person for you. The best way you'll ever be a good mentor is to have one in your life, to know what it's like, the questions that you ask. If we start doing that, you see, we start functioning well like a church. We'll start looking to other people to have wisdom or kindness or even just your prayers. for me, I asked a woman who's 80 years old, I said, I'm doing a Bible study right now that I don't know what I'm doing. Can you pray for me? Every Thursday. Yeah, I'll do it every day, but I'll do a whole hour for you during that time. She's retired. She doesn't do anything. It's a good thing for her to do. But I appreciate that. Our saints, our older saints, they need a job too. Not to be old or cranky or people who are trying to, because they need to be needed, right? They'll find a way to get in there. So, I mean, there's a whole church that we need to use. Start thinking about reaching out to somebody that can teach you by the experience, by that experience. In other words, what am I asking for this person? I need to think about that, that might be true for somebody else. Sorry, that's you made a mess. That's all right.
Yes.
I looked at these young people right here, in charge of. He was 15 years old. He is in charge of a large company. He stayed in town, and he continues to do the same thing. This young person, he builds giant trucks, that four-wheelers, right? He said to me 2 weeks ago, he said, if you need any help, let me know. He's 25 years old. I did his wedding. These are the ones that stay. These girls are all over the place. One's a nurse, took care of my mom when she had heart surgery, right? But she's studying with this college student here, right? Two young people who are young entrepreneurs in Zambia. They wanted to know to do a business that was spirit filled. Under this, they wanted to use principles that are Christian. He doesn't have a lot of people in their world that it's very different in Africa, right? It says, I don't know, I'm not a businessman, but I'm going to work, and I'm going to come, and I'm going to spend $1,500, and I'm going to come once a year to make sure they have a business in Africa. So I'm saving, but I made a commitment to these two young people who are 16 and 17, who are businessmen in Zambia. Why? The work that we'll do is one at a time. Same way. Let God do the multiplication, okay? It'll be out of our hands. We try to manage the multiplication. The multiplication is a byproduct of some principles of number one at a time. I tried to do this. And the reason why I tried to manage this, I got this concept. I had 50 young people in high school. I took them on a retreat. So I said, here we are. I did my best speech. I did everything. We organized the church, young people that were young, right? I put them up on the boards, and they were going to sign up to all these kids that they were going to pray and start getting close to these kids and start cultivating relationships and doing that. And then I would have the whole church covered with somebody who would be a mentor. And I did this. I was so proud that I had the thought to have the discipline to do this thing that was so dumb. It wasn't dumb. It was a great. My heart was for those young people, and I thought, if it works for one, it should be good for everyone. I haven't found a way to do that in such a way that I can't. You can do harm. Out that experience of taking those 50 kids, I only had about 10 or 15 of those kids that I had this kind of relationship. Can't do more than that. And I don't have a real good relationship now when they're 30, because it was a little bit quick and dirty and easy to try to do this hard thing that really should take a part of your heart. It should take like a marriage almost. You can't be married to 7 people. It doesn't work. Ask them. I live near Salt Lake. Still doesn't work real well. You know? Does that make sense? So I think about this. Public schools, secular kids, not Christian. These are kids that I went on to a retreat for leadership. I found 1 or 2 or 3 kids. One kid in the community, he showed up with a tie. His grandmother said, "You're going to something important. You put on." He was so excited to be a part of this little event. I have college kids here, and they're around the world. Some of these kids have made a decision to follow Christ. I can't do all of them. I see them around, and I wish. These are public, secular kids. Some of them are nurses now, and there are a little, well, I don't know. I thought I had something with, it's right here. Ah, yes. I'm trying to find my mouse. Here we go. I'm aware. I took 11 students who are
resilience,
not working at all, getting kicked out of school.
spirit, to recover, pliable, flexible, bouncy,
This.
everyone faces adversity, trial, misfortune. Resilient is all about bouncing back.
I'm sorry.
Simply not letting challenge define us. It's each challenge.
These are the mentors and the young people who are. I can't listen to that. Sorry. It's not working. I'm not going to do more. I don't know why it's doing that, but I did. This girl, Yesenia, she's now a nurse. Found a person in her life. She didn't have a mother or father who stayed in Mexico, but she had to find someone. We organized a person in her life who was a Christian person, and now she's in nursing school. There is a principle. Number 1, you have to start by, like I said before, ask somebody to be that person that you want to be with somebody else. You'll learn more than you'll ever learn that anyone can put in a book or a presentation or anything like that. And I start thinking about the other things. If you don't have influence in young people right now, most of you already have that because you're here, right? if you don't, or you don't feel like you have that, don't listen to that lie. That's the devil saying that God is not working. It's gonna fail. No. Start praying. Start praying for the people that you know. You don't have to organize a mentoring situation this week or next week or even a month. Just start preparing your part for that. Because the reality is a mentor is not somebody that you assign or appoint. That's not your job. A mentor is a person who chooses to say, I want to work with you. I don't care if you're 6 years old, or 9 years old, or 16 years old. Can you make them want to follow Jesus? 6? No. They'll just kick the chairs, destruct. They'll do all kinds of things, right? You can't do that. Their decision is to say, over time, I kind of want to be like that person. That is not your work. That's their work to say, I want to be trained or taught or become like that person. Your job on this side is to be available, to be persistent, to be there, and then ask those difficult questions at that moment. And you can say, you know what? I have a 16-year-old person who came to me and said, I don't have any support for my Christian life. I said, how can I do that at home? And I said, what are you asking me? He says, I want you to help me. And I said, all right, if we do this, and I want this more than anyone else, anything that I want right now in my life, I want you to have an impact on your family. It's going to be because we work together on this. And so I'll pray. I will pray. I will look. I will do this. And let's do this together. But I need to be that for my family. What? You're a pastor? I know, but I come home and I get angry sometimes. Or I'm lazy. Or I'm this or that. I said, I need to do the same thing with my family. How? Really? You're like a pastor. Yeah, let me tell you about a little secret. We're pretty screwed up sometimes. Right? So, what do you say? I'll be praying for your family, you pray for mine, okay? Okay. This is the one kid, he comes to my house and he works with my son, who doesn't know how to read or write at 16 years old. So it does work. God will help you find the way. I say to, I'm sorry if there's no good answer, but we don't have an encyclopedia for this. We have you. You get to develop it. I'm excited about that. It's the next book. Is in your relationship with somebody else. So my challenge is find somebody that you can reach out who's older than you, who can be that for you, and start thinking and praying for the one person that you can reach out to them. And that relationship, the training for that, there are things to do. But that's usually a conversation, not in a book. Because there's no book for the person's life that they're going through right now. Does that make sense? It's not a cop-out. I'm just not going to sell another book that's about my experience. It's not going to be yours. Does that make sense? when it comes to the spiritual life stuff, if you want those, I have a book. It's a devotional book called 40 Days Wild. It's out of print now. I have to print it. I don't have the money to print it again, but I have it PDF of that, and then we're using it right now. In fact, when I decided to do that, I have one of my young people who's in engineering. He's making an app for this. So turns out it's okay. But if you want to have that, I'll send that devotional. You have the PDF. Just don't sell it. That's all I ask. But if you want that, it's called 40 Days Wild. It's basically that you can walk with somebody else on the spiritual life. Just everything from praying to scripture to doing service and things like that. It's just 40 days or 10 weeks or whatever. But if you want to do that, you have to go to Lead Out, and I'll make sure. I mean, I can email it directly, but I don't have a sign up or anything like that. Unless you want to put that, the easy way to do that is go to Lead Out. Okay, Ministries. Okay. You go there and just on the info, just email us, and they'll do that. And I'll see if I can put that up here. Does that make sense? I think I can do that. I'll show the. So here's the website here, okay? And you'll have just go to the email down there at the bottom there. It says, I think there's an email, contact me, and just say, I'd like to try that devotional. And I'll send everything I have, okay? And I'll do it one by one. It'll take me about a week, but, okay? And,
Thanks.
and I would love to see what's going on and develop that, but I almost wrote a book about mentoring just because it's going to make a mess. Because somebody's going to have a book, they'll try to use it, and they won't use the one thing that you have that's a resource of you. And sometimes the books are good to have principles, but you can do it in a pamphlet or an app or whatever. But I'd like to see stories of those interactions with young people. Start cultivating those relationships and getting them deeper. In other words, getting into that relationship with them that you can ask them and say, hey, are you right with God? Are you wanting to do something great for God? I just read this passage. Do you want to do something different? Let's do it together. I'm excited, but I want somebody to partner with. I want somebody to walk with on this journey. And I just see you at the children's story, and guess what? You're so attentive, and you know what? I'm so impressed with you. I do that. Some of my best workers right now are just people doing the affirmation thing. I said, you know what? I'm sitting there, and you are always so attentive. I said, that's rare. Do you know you're very, that's a gift. Really? Yeah. You should listen to the Holy Spirit on that one, because you might get called to do something crazy. Somebody's kind of at the next Pathfinder or the next sermon, yeah, I feel like I need to do something. Just trust that. Somebody plants the seed, that might be you, or maybe somebody else, and you water it, what happens? God brings it does. I believe that. I think when we start getting back to that, like as our church, I think we're going to feel that life. Anyway, it's time for lunch or something. I don't know. So sorry. All right, let me do it. Lord, as we God, pray that you would bring a blessing on our lives right now, right here in this room. I pray that the people that right now are ready to go, to grow, to deepen, to take a step of, just like maybe a launch of faith. I pray that you'll give the opportunities to be arrested for those moments, that are for eternity, that they can do this, and they might even find a better way to do this in 10 years, who knows? Lord, but we know you know that. So I pray that you do your work. We're just your hands and feet. We are your children. Teach us how to do it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing for these young people. I really appreciate it.